Most people believe miracles only happen in ancient stories or Bible verses. But what if I told you heaven still answers? That God still sends angels, even if they don't come with wings? Today, you're going to hear an inspiring true story. A story not just emotional, but transformational. A little orphan boy, forgotten by the world, starving, broken, but holding on to one thing no one could take from him: faith. Faith that moved heaven, brought hope in darkness, and made life bloom in a place where only dust and pain had ever lived. But this isn't just about a boy. It's about me, about you, about anyone who's ever felt alone, desperate, waiting for an answer. And what if I told you the real miracle wasn't the bread, the rain, or even the garden, but what happened inside the boy? A soul transformation so deep, it reminds us that God can act even now, while you're watching this very video. If you've ever thought of giving up, if you've ever doubted whether your prayers are being heard, this video was made for you. But don't be mistaken, this isn't just another touching YouTube story. It's a wake-up call, a call to see the unseen, to recognize the angels God sends, and to finally believe. Heaven still listens. Some children are born carrying a weight far heavier than their age. Julian Cito was one of them, a fragile soul with burdens too heavy for a 7-year-old heart. He lived in a broken hut at the edge of a forgotten land, with nothing but old memories and a sliver of faith. After his mother passed from a silent fever, and his father left with nothing but empty promises, Julian Cito survived alone. Every morning, barefoot, he walked miles for water, stomach growling, heart aching. He was an orphan boy, lost to the world but not to God. And one day, weak and trembling, he knelt under a dying tree and whispered, "God, just enough strength to get me there." Imagine a child speaking directly to heaven like that, not with fancy words, but with raw truth. This wasn't just survival. This was hope in darkness. It's the kind of hope that keeps you walking even when there's no food, no comfort, no one. That's when divine intervention begins. Not with thunderclap, but with a whisper. For those who have lived through child poverty, who know the taste of despair, they'll tell you, when you have nothing left, faith is everything. That moment under the tree wasn't just a fall. It was a holy moment, a quiet invitation to heaven. Because sometimes the most powerful answered prayer begins with just 4 words: God, help me stand. And though Julian Cito didn't know it yet, heaven had already begun to move. The next morning, Julian Cito opened his door and saw the impossible. A tall, thin man walking slowly across the cracked earth, as if time itself made room for him. But this man didn't bring fear. He brought peace, a stillness that felt like the heat had pause and reverence. With a kind smile and a voice like soft wind, the man handed the boy a piece of warm bread. Then he said, "God never forgets a child who prays from the heart." Can you picture it? After days of hunger, after years of silence, someone arrives not only with food, but with holy presence. This wasn't just a kind stranger. It was the beginning of an angel story, a real miracle wrapped in simplicity. Sometimes, the angels God sends don't come with halos. They come with bread and a smile that says, "You've been heard." Julian Cito didn't feel afraid. He felt safe, seen, understood. The man had no shadow of exhaustion, no scent of travel, only peace. He didn't speak much, but everything about him said, "You are not alone anymore." That's how you know when you're in the presence of a spiritual guardian. When words are optional and the soul understands everything. That night, Julian Cito didn't cry, not because the pain had vanished, but because something else had arrived. Comfort. The old man sat beside him and told him stories, not of fear or pity, but of hope, unseen blessings in God's miracles. When the boy asked where he came from, the man simply replied, "From where prayers are heard." No need for more. Sometimes you don't need understanding. You just need to feel it. It was the start of a spiritual awakening. The man's words weren't loud or complicated, but they carried weight, the kind that speaks straight to the soul. Julian Cito, still a lonely child in the world's eyes, was no longer truly alone. And that changed everything. That's how Christian storytelling works. It doesn't always explain. It transforms. That night, something planted itself deep in Julian Cito's heart. Not fear, not questions, but purpose. And little did he know, the garden outside wasn't the only thing about to grow. The next morning, the old man led Julian Cito behind the hut. He pointed to a barren patch of land. "This used to be a garden," he said. "Let's bring it back to life." No tools, no rain, just their hands and faith. They dug, planted, and sowed seeds into dust. "Nothing grows without faith," the man whispered. That's the kind of faith that doesn't wait for results to believe. The kind that says, plant anyway. It's the same Christian inspiration we all need when things look dead. When your heart feels dry, do you still have the courage to plant love, generosity, forgiveness? That's faith. That's what they planted, not just seeds, but hope restored. The soil may have looked dead, but the act of planting was already a miracle. And underneath the surface, something divine was preparing to burst forth. A few days later, clouds appeared, a rare gift in that sun-baked land. As the first drops of healing rain fell, Julian Cito ran into the open, arms wide, laughing, crying. It wasn't just rain, it was the answer. It was God's miracle, pouring from above. The old man stood at the door, smiling. "God heard you, my child." This wasn't just about water. It was about being seen. That rain was sacred, a divine reply to a lonely child's whisper, a reminder that even in the driest moments, hope in darkness is never really gone. And when it returns, it floods. That night, the heavens wept with the earth, not in grief, but in celebration. For a child who had once been abandoned, now found himself held by grace. By morning, something unbelievable had happened. Tiny green sprouts broke through the soil. "Grandpa, look!" Julian Cito shouted. The old man smiled and said, "Life responded to your prayer, but the real miracle is inside you." And that was true. The biggest transformation was not around him. It was within him. That's how soul transformation works. It doesn't always show up in your bank account or circumstances. It shows up in your eyes, in your peace, in how you respond to life. Julian Cito was still a poor orphan boy, but now he had something priceless. Purpose. He no longer walked in fear. He walked in meaning. And once that shift happens inside, the outside starts to follow. As the garden grew, so did the boy. One evening, he turned to the old man and asked, "Can I call you Grandpa?" The man just smiled and tousled his hair. No words, just love. That night, Julian Cito slept soundly, not dreaming of food or his father, but of trees, laughter, and sky. But in the morning, the man was gone, his bed empty, only his staff leaning silently by the wall. No note, no goodbye, just presence turned into mystery. And deep down, Julian Cito knew that man hadn't just walked away. He had been sent, and now it was time for him to continue with faith as his guide. Later that day, a woman from a nearby village came by. She saw the garden and was stunned. "How is this possible?" she asked. Julian Cito pointed to the staff. It was his. She stepped forward, touched the staff, and froze. That belonged to Father Severino. He passed away years ago. Julian Cito whispered, "Then he was an angel." He knelt, not to mourn, but to give thanks. Because now he knew this wasn't just a story. It was an angel story, a sacred encounter, a real miracle disguised as daily life. The garden was now an altar, the staff a relic. The boy, once abandoned, had become a vessel of light. Word spread quickly. People came from nearby towns, some bringing food, others bringing seeds, most bringing open hearts. They came not out of curiosity, but searching for something: truth, faith, Christian inspiration. Julian Cito, the once forgotten boy, now stood as a storyteller, not of fiction, but of miracles of faith. His voice didn't tremble. It carried power, peace, testimony, and the world listened, not because he was special, but because he had lived what many only hoped for: divine intervention in real life. One evening, surrounded by flowers and fruit, Julian Cito saw something new. A young tree, growing exactly where it planted with the old man. He touched the bark, smiled, and whispered, "Thank you, Grandpa, for showing me that God never abandons his children." That tree wasn't just wood and leaves. It was memory. It was promise. A symbol of a child, an angel of hope restored, and a faith that never gave up. The miracle wasn't what they planted, but what had grown inside him. The orphan boy was no longer just a boy. He was a keeper of faith, a living example of what happens when heaven responds. Now let me ask you, have you ever felt alone? Forgotten? Like no one was hearing the cries from your heart? Maybe you've been praying for a sign, and maybe, just maybe, this story is your sign. God never abandons his children. He works in silence, in timing, and in people. Just like he sent someone to Julian Cito, maybe he's already sending someone to you. So, are you planting your seeds of faith or waiting for rain before you start? If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs it. Leave a comment. Tell me, what was your purest moment of faith? And if you want more stories like this, filled with Christian motivation, healing, and truth, subscribe, hit the bell, and come walk this journey of faith with us. Because here, the miracles never stopped.